Music that tells you that it's the Common Good podcast. Welcome. It's the Tuesday, June 8th edition, the day we've been waiting for since Monday, that we would join together on Tuesday to talk politics and the common good. I'm Doug Padgett in Minneapolis, sitting down today. I did a long bike ride yesterday and this morning, and I'm going to take a little time off my legs. I'm joined by Robb and the producer Dan hovering in the background back there. So to all of you, let us know where you're coming from if you're following along on the chats and the live streams. And you do know this goes out on multiple live streams. So you share it with your friends wherever you're watching and let them know that you're part of the common good and you want to make that your voting criteria along with the rest of the way you live your life. So, Robb, I said I was in Minneapolis. Where are you?
I am in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where it has not stopped raining for feels like 40 days and 40 nights. Yeah.
Sorry to hear that. Is that a common experience in the early summer in Arkansas?
No, not really. We will really dry. We tend to really dry out in August, but this seems a little different, a little strange. Maybe the climate is changing or something. I don't know.
Maybe it is, and maybe it's finally caught up to the weather. Hey, I heard a podcast the other day, and people were talking about Arkansas and referred to it as the state that politically plays above its weight, and started to rattle off, because they were talking about Sarah Huckabee Sanders running for governor, and started to just name all the major influences in the political scene in the United States through the lens of Arkansas. You know, back to the Clintons and a whole bunch of others that now I can't remember. But when they were rattling them off,
Wesley Clark, Mike Huckabee. There's a whole bunch.
And way back in 2008, it was a reliably Democratic place, like Arkansas, which is now people refer to as ruby red, and people like you say you can't win as a Democrat in Arkansas. Boy, that's really new. Like that's a last 10-year, 12, 15-year phenomenon.
Yeah.
And it just seems like it's maybe a place that'd be worth paying more attention to. I mean, obviously you do, because you live there and your family's there and you're part of it all. But Arkansas is probably a little microcosm we should talk about sometime, how it's a microcosm of our country.
Yeah, exactly. To coin a phrase, it's interesting because Arkansas was really the last of the southern states to go from blue to red. And I think that was in part maybe because of Bill Clinton, that he kind of helped to keep it blue.
I see.
And
you're saying he moved it over to the Republican column, but
no. And up until when Tom Cotton was elected, I mean, we had Democratic senators as well. And it's a really strange place that it feels like it has lagged behind the shift that has taken place in the rest of the South. And I actually think that means it has further to go in the cycle before it will become like, a Georgia. I actually think, I don't think it means it's easily flippable. I think it's actually going to have to go through a life cycle of redness before it becomes flippable again, like Georgia has, like Texas has.
You're saying it's running through a cycle. You're not going to reverse and go back. You're saying,
you got to go through it.
Yeah, less good news. It has longer to go.
Yeah, I am not optimistic at all about Arkansas politics, and I'm a very optimistic person. But it is I was about to say a word that would get us the explicit label on iTunes or on Apple Podcasts, which I don't want to do that. But it's a mess down here. It really is, and particularly we have a state legislature that is amongst the worst in the nation. My wife Vanessa, referred to it as, like if you went to a private Christian school as many of us did. They're running the whole state like a private Christian school. And it is, it's an utter mess. And, when you look at who we have to choose from between, for governor, Leslie Rutledge, who led so many of the pro-Trump lawsuits from the states, along with Texas, and she participated in all of that and has been a huge Trump supporter. The choice is either her or Sarah Huckabee Sanders. And it's just abysmal.
That is something, but it tells you that, look, these states change, cities change, politics changes. I guess the upside is we're not dealing with, it's closer to the, ocean waves or river flow than it is to mountains or prairies, right? Like it's change that's happening all the time in politics, and whatever it is that bumps the cycle, whatever it is that moves the sense of identity that people have by where they live, that dictates who they're going to vote for, which I still find to be among the most curious and confusing things that, and as somebody who, had very deep interest in sociology and psychology and social anthropology in my younger days, through college and graduate school and all, very interested in like how it is that a culture is shaped, and then how a individual person is impacted by that culture as it shifts. It's so amazing that where you live and the people who live around you and how they think gets into how you think and how you live, and it morphs you to the degree that, as we've talked about many times on this podcast, gerrymandering is possible, that you can draw districts because you just know if someone lives there, they're going to think in a way that's going to cause them to vote in a certain way. That is a reality, is one of the things I just think we have to think about all the time when we talk about politics, is that it's a social construct that is continuously in the process of development and growth and de-evolution. And so I don't know, it's improv, it's live jazz, it's something more than just, it is what it is, and what we just have to do is like drive turnout or something. Like, there's we can be makers of that society and of that culture and of those notions of reality. Arkansas is a little example of that.
Yeah. And I'm always super interested in how history repeats itself, and how, we can see patterns emerging over time. And I tend to think, and I've had this kind of realization lately, that what we have seen here in Arkansas. So Arkansas is one of those states that is required to have a balanced budget by constitutional amendment. Can't run a deficit. We are running a surplus this year of $1 billion. The Arkansas state government has a surplus of $1 billion. And our state legislature is going back into special session to cut taxes to eliminate that deficit. While we rank last in the nation in education, we rank last in the nation in poverty, in terms of poverty, infrastructure. I mean, every measurable category, Arkansas is near the bottom. But we can't spend any money. The government can't spend any money to try to solve those problems. But at the same time, Arkansas is also home to so many of the country's richest people. The Walton family all lives here. People maybe they know, maybe they don't know, but Walmart global headquarters is, not far from where I'm sitting right now. As is Tyson Food. Their global headquarters is not far from where I'm sitting right now. JB Hunt Trucking Company is not far from where I am right now. There are billionaires that live
Yeah.
here in Arkansas. And what and kind of complete the point with this idea of like history repeating itself, what we've got is our state government is abdicating control, opportunity to influence things for the good based on, their, hypocritically often held conservative principles. But they are shifting the responsibility of that to the wealthiest members of our state, the wealthiest citizens in our state, and they are now able to shape Arkansas's educational system and so many aspects of things in Arkansas, because they use charitable giving and the foundations that they run and the organizations that they support. It's a way of it's
a pseudo government
address these
almost.
problems. Yeah, but it's almost like it's like a Gilded Age kind of thing. It's a Rockefeller thing, where we've got, rather than having government handle some of these things on behalf of all of us, we are relying on the the generosity of the billionaires, to help pull us out and to, do the things that make us all feel good, like, sponsor state parks or put in, amazing museums. I mean, we've got, because of the Waltons, we have got one of the world's greatest museums here in Northwest Arkansas, Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art. It is one of the world's greatest museums, while we rank last in education. It's just, it's a weird dichotomy, and there's crazy things that are happening here. But I also know we didn't plan to talk about Arkansas all day. It's just, but it's a weird place.
Yeah, and I was sort of joking at an homage to the poet laureate of O Common Good with her very famous and worldwide known poem, "Mississippi is a microcosm of my nation." But in a lot of ways, Arkansas, by these descriptions, really is a small place to look at the impacts that are repeating themselves in this, in sort of a non-identical way all across the country. Lots of things going on. All right, hey, a couple other things happening in politics. We're into primary days. I think maybe today or next week there's some gubernatorial primaries that are happening.
Today in
So
Virginia.
for people who are thinking, wow, I'm glad to have a break from electoral politics. Well, that's true, but it's like a sport where during the off season is when champions are built. So it's during this period of time when the people who are the party people that run the political parties are doing all the things you have to do to run a political party and to put candidates in play. And actually the candidates that you will be thinking of voting for in this fall or in next fall, if you have those elections, that is all happening right now. So that's happening. And it's happening over there in what would you say, New Jersey and in Virginia?
Yeah, Virginia. People are voting today in the Democratic primary in Virginia.
Yeah, they're and that's going to determine, they think that whoever the Democratic candidate is, or at least, and I know somebody else can run outside of it, is likely to win that election. So these primaries are just crazy important, right? That if you win the primary, and there's a lot of candidates that are being primaried for their 2022 congressional runs, or they will be next fall, how powerful that can be for someone to be primaried. Well, in New Jersey, the Republicans are having to basically have a little test on how Trumpy the politics for the GOP is going to be in New Jersey, because they are they have somebody that's super like, let's be done with this guy, let's move on, let's be a kind of fiscal conservative Republican, best practices kind of business oriented guy, and then somebody that's like, no, this is all about identity, and this is all about those the insurrectionists supporting Trumpists that are out there. So that'll be curious to find out, where did New Jersey go? And I bet of no one who's hungry for the answer to that question quite like Chris Christie, because that guy wants to know if his brand has carried, because and he's a bit of a hybrid himself. So anyway, not I think that New Jersey represents this moment where you start to see how is it going to look, right? It's these are early signs of how deep does this Trump fanaticism run inside the Republican Party.
Yeah, and the question is are Republicans going to double down on Trumpism and not just the policies of Trumpism, but the attitude and approach of Trumpism, the bombastic style and the confrontational style of Trumpism. And it's going to be interesting to see if there's a doubling down on that or if there is fatigue of that. And New Jersey really is an interesting test case because for many years they had Chris Christie as their governor. And Chris Christie really, Trump patterned his approach on the way Chris Christie governed in New Jersey. And I mean, no one was more upset to see Trump enter the presidential race than Chris Christie, because he had that lane as the the Northeast tough talking, politically incorrect guy who's going to just say it like it is. That was Chris Christie's brand. And Trump entered the presidential race in 2016 in the Republican primary and took the air right out of Chris Christie's sails. And reduced him to, the guy who was running to McDonald's to get, Trump a Big Mac.
Probably picked up a few things for himself. as I want to do too. Pick up those breakfast
if there
burritos.
is an area that had this approach with Chris Christie for 8 years as governor, then had it for 4 years with Donald Trump as president, they've had 12 years of this approach. And it's a really, we're going to be able to see, has the fatigue set in? And is that an indication that, maybe the fatigue is going to set in across the country? Or does that mean that, no, actually, this is the way we need to do it. We're going to double down on this. It's going to be a real interesting test case to see.
And did enough of the non-Trumpist leaning Republicans leave the Republican Party and will not participate or can no longer participate because they're not Republicans officially any longer in the primary process? That's the other thing that happens when you weed down a political party. You then end up with the people who are just the most fringy or the most committed to ideas that the other people just couldn't handle any longer. So it gets more intense. You dilute the what?
You boil it down, and this is Trumpism concentrated. With all of the kind of moderates, common sense Republicans taken out, it's very concentrated now.
Yeah, and I don't know how their primaries work. Yeah, so that's what's going to really change the scene. So anyway, that's all happening. So if you're into this stuff, stick with Vote Common Good. We're gonna help. The Republicans who've tried to find an off-ramp, the Republicans who need a break from this stuff, the Republicans, former Republicans who have felt like they made a big mistake. And there's a few people that feel like they made a big mistake. This video that's so famous from the insurrection, from or what is also called the Donald Trump rally. So after Donald Trump held the rally outside of the White House, then the people who came to his rally, they attacked the Capitol and beat police officers and tried to stop the certification of the election. So
and 5 people were killed.
5 people died as a result of this, and it was planned. It was planned ahead of time. Turns out, right? They know this. Thanks, Dan. Good catch up. What a report that just came out from 2 Senate committees, because the Senate has decided we don't need to have a commission to look at this, as Mitch McConnell said. We know what happened. We don't have to look at it. I mean, just insane. They also have two committees that are putting together a report, and a report is out. And one of the phrases from this headline from ABC News is, it was planned in plain sight. That they now have been able to go back and find what the intelligence was, and they know these guys were planning this. This wasn't just, I went to a rally and things got crazy. This wasn't Woodstock. This was They planned ahead of time how they were going to go to the Capitol, what they would do when they got there, what the tunnels looked like. They intended to do what they did. And people were ginned up to it. And one of the guys in that very famous video where they're coming up the stairs, and that's the one video that they've sort of detailed, step by step, and where the officer comes up the stairs and he looks over to his left and he sees that that's where the Senate chamber is, so he gets the crowd to follow him to the right. That guy so the officer is the one walking backward in that video. The man who was the front of that crowd, who was jeering at him and coming at him, they arrested that guy, of course, from Des Moines, Iowa. Nice little town. He wore his QAnon shirt and says in his court filings he wore the QAnon shirt because he wanted to be sure that the QAnon message was out in front when he was on TV so that Q would get the credit. So here's a guy first in the building, chasing down a police officer wearing a QAnon shirt, saying, I wore the QAnon shirt because I wanted to make sure it got on TV, meaning we knew we were going to get on TV for this. We did this as public display. This was a public attack on our Capitol, and we planned it, and I even picked my wardrobe, says this guy. Well, now, Rob, maybe you saw this. He's now saying he did this, quote, for reasons he does not even understand himself today. He doesn't know how he got bamboozled into QAnon. So he went down a deep, deep hole, and part of his defense is, I don't know. We do know how the guy got bamboozled, because he says later in the same court filings, Dan, maybe you can pull that next one up. He says, I went because the president of the United States told me to come and to be a patriot. So his line is, it was the one just back there, Dan. One back. The line is, in any event, he fell victim to this barrage of internet sourced information and came to the Capitol at the direction of the president of the United States to demonstrate that he was, quote, a true patriot, his court filings say. So this guy is now like, I went down a hole. I regret it. I don't even know how I got there. The president told me to come. I came. I put on my Q shirt. I got in front. I attacked the Capitol. I was a soldier in the president's army. I mean, this is as bad as January 6th was. And I know that today on June 8th, there's people that are like, good grief, people, you're a month and 2 days, you're 6 months and 2 days out. It's just getting more intense.
No.
And
we can never get over this until justice is served. We cannot let this go. We can't. It's too important. Listen, let's put this in context for a second.
Okay.
QAnon, for those of you that haven't seen the HBO documentary about Q, QAnon is and the person who is Q is a man named Ron Watkins, who ran a website where he was trying to generate traffic to his website. And he took on this persona of Q to generate website to his message board, to generate traffic to his message board website.
Can I add one slight addition to that?
Sure.
So I watched that documentary as well. So early on, there was a Q source. Then it got shut down. The message board, all that was on. Yeah. Then picked up by 8chan, where Ron Watkins comes in.
Which is a different message board.
True Q, different message board. Moves over to another internet site. True QAnoners say the original Q is not the same as when Ron Watkins took it over. So now, to your point, being correct, all the things that this fella from Des Moines and all the people wearing their Q shirts, the stuff they were following that was this Ron Watkins who was ginning all this stuff up. But the
Trying to
truest of true
generate-
believers say, no, there was a truth to it, which I bring all that up only because the true nature of a cult is that you have an ultimate source somewhere that is pure, and then later people pervert it. So it's essential in the Q narrative for a lot of people that there was an original truth there that they were that they were pursuing. So all that to say, these people are, it's more like a cult than it is like a political theory or even a conspiracy theory.
Right. This man went to Washington, D.C. because the president of the United States invited him there. He stormed the Capitol because a guy on the internet trying to drum up traffic for his website told him to. It is stunning. And for those of you that haven't seen the HBO documentary that I highly recommend, Ron Watkins, Q's dad, was there.
Yes.
He was there on January 6th. He was on the steps of the Capitol. He didn't go inside as far as the documentary shows, but he was there. Yes. There's just a number of thoughts. One, it's just dumbfounding to think that our democracy almost went down because a guy was trying to gin traffic to his website. Listen, I've got a couple of websites out there. I have read articles on how to turn out traffic to my website.
None of it involved conspiracy theories about children's blood being taken out and given to. Yeah,
it would bring down American democracy. It's
Turns out it really works if you want.
Here I was trying to put out good content. What I should have been doing was trying to incite a.
One of the things in all of media is there's two measurements. There's the size of your audience, but then there's also what's referred to in advertising language as the movability of your audience. Like, in other words, if you say to your followers, buy this shampoo, think about this, do a test drive of this car, and they do what you tell them to do, they have a very movable audience, right? So very active and engaged. The size matters a lot, but if you have 5 million people and a small movability, that's good. But if you have 1 million people with high movability, you can move them. Yeah. That's really what you want. Q had very movable people, that, and Trumpism. And this is what makes it dangerous. It doesn't matter when people say, like, and I find myself saying this to get myself to sleep at night. Look, it's 23% of 20% of the population. Just settle down. It's not everyone votes or sees themselves in a party. So you cut the number, the population in half, and then half of that are going to be Republicans, and then half of that are going to be the kinds of people that are into this, and another half of that are the people that are going to really be active, right? So it's a small number. But you saw that, you could, in a country of 350 million people, you can get 10,000, 20,000 people to show up at the Capitol and then to attack it. And the idea that these people are not going to attack the Capitol again, I think, is just utter foolishness.
Yep.
I mean, the chances of Al-Qaeda getting themselves back together and hijacking airplanes and flying them into buildings, I think that's pretty close to zero. That's not happening again. And we still act every single day as if we're going to prevent that from happening. This thing, these people are planning it again. There is no doubt about it. Now, whether or not the failed blogger and twice impeached failed presidential candidate can move them along or not, I don't know. But he did it once. And so now, for sure, he had the bully pulpit of the presidency of the United States when he stepped outside the White House, stood up on a stage and said, "You've got to fight like hell and go get Mike Pence." I mean, it is just, that whole episode needs to just be played on a loop.
There's something about the psyche of the people involved, though, that is interesting, that we have seen repeatedly now. This is not the first time we have heard someone who has been charged in the January 6th insurrection say, it's not my fault. I was just doing what I was told to do.
Yeah.
We've had people use the defense of, well, he just watched too much Fox News, or they were deceived, or the president told him to. It seems like these patriotic people who want to stand up don't want to take responsibility for what they've done. They want to pass the buck to somebody else. And I don't know if this is just what I think this defense of, well, I didn't know what I was doing, I think it's going to backfire on them in terms of public opinion. I think this is the type of thing that it feels like kind of for these people who postured themselves as very macho men, like it feels like a really kind of wimpy way out to not boldly say, yeah, I did it. I stormed the Capitol because, they're Fox News
like
told me to.
like that guy that put his feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk. He was like that. He's like, yeah, I did it. I'd do it again. Like he just maintained his persona. But you're right. So many of these other guys, and maybe they're thinking it's better to not have the public think of them as a felon, but to think of them as a fool. Like maybe that's just the better calculation. Because I bet you go back through these people's text messages, which they are, their emails, their personal conversations by interviewing friends and family, and they're going to find out these guys weren't just being duped. Like they bought plane tickets and he bought a QAnon shirt off of a website. Like he wasn't, there are some people who they really are, the defense really is saying, look, this person has serious mental health issues, or this person is on is on a spectrum. And you just have to know, Judge, that, you're dealing with somebody here that is easily manipulated into this. And here's long-term medical content on that. They're pulling out everything they can because they know how just absolutely horrible this is. And the fact that somehow Donald Trump still gets a pass on this stuff from so many people is just incredible. I'm gonna meet this week with a Capitol police officer in Washington, D.C., who was part of this, and start hearing these stories of these guys. And because those stories really do have to be told too, even if someone didn't die, just the fact that they were involved in, by their own estimation, hand-to-hand combat over multiple hours with U.S. citizens trying to protect the Capitol. And I have Republican friends of mine, because now I'm just saying, like, look, after they said that I'm going to investigate this with a commission, that if you're going to claim Republican status, you have to own the fact that you just you also do not believe that we need to investigate with the full force of the federal government what happened with the insurrection on January 6th. You can't say, no, I'm a Republican, but I do think we should have looked at that. I just think this is one of those things that you can't. I think it's bigger than the party, and it's labeled you just severely. But I have Republican friends that are saying, like, no. That's like saying that you as a Democrat think we should burn down police stations. Like, no, because nobody burning down the police station, and I was there in Minneapolis, was saying, I'm doing this because Joe Biden sent me here to do this. Like, this is not the same thing at all. That's an American response. This is a very particular Donald Trump response. And then the Republicans said, no, we shouldn't investigate it. No, we shouldn't look into it. No, we know enough already. There's nothing going to be gained here by an investigation. And look, I understand what Mitch McConnell wants to do. He doesn't want people talking about this. You don't get to do that. You don't get to not talk about the insurrection. I mean, it's just absolutely bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. I really got myself wired up there. I mean, I could feel it. Whew. Hey, one more news story. And this one, the government did something right, and the FBI did something right. And I don't have a chance to say that very often in my life. But there's this little headline here that the FBI and this is what cracks me up, the Australian government went together, and Rob, they created an app that then they marketed and pitched to criminals, like a WhatsApp kind of thing, a communication thing called ANOM, ANOM, and use this app and then to use it to communicate about their criminal activities. And they were tracking everything going on in the app. Just fantastic. So now they're
It's
arresting
amazing.
more than 800 of them, and they're up deep in their lives. And that's the kind of thing that you think, on one hand, you're able to pull that off, and on the other hand, you didn't know these knuckleheads were coming in to attack the Capitol. And now, of course, they're saying, yeah, of course they did. But you get this mixed thing with the government, right? And every once in a while, when there's a global criminal conspiracy, that's not the Trump business and company, the government can do a lot to attack it and to get after it. Hey, and Dan, I know you're listening. Since our conversation yesterday, news stories came out that the U.S. has clawed back that Bitcoin money from the group that so
not all of it.
Side note,
some of it.
if you listened yesterday, they went and got all the Bitcoin back, but Bitcoin, because it's a sham, is just rising and falling every day. So the day they took it back, it was worth $2.3 million. But the day that they had bought it or given it to them, it was worth $4 million or whatever. So they went and tracked the wallet where the Bitcoin was held, where the company transferred the money to a Bitcoin wallet in California. The federal government just tracked it, went and got it, and took it back. So if your thing about Bitcoin is it's anonymous, it's not trackable, it's not traceable, turns out, it is. It is. So
maybe they just
we're now out of ideas for why this cryptocurrency Bitcoin thing, it's clearly being, I'm going to be on my soapbox again. It's clearly being used for criminal activity. And the thing you think that's so great about it is that it's untrackable. Yeah, apparently not.
I think they probably just put some of that purple dye in with it, Doug. When they paid their
little packet, little packet blew up.
Now listen, one of my best friends bought Dogecoin really cheap, and his over the last couple of months has made a lot of money. And
my son did. My son did the same thing. Yeah. Look, look, as an investment, there's all kinds of ways you can make money. People buy cars, buy things that go up and down in value.
Yeah,
it's different than a currency. Listen to yesterday's podcast if you want to hear a full rant on this, listeners.
We should get our economics friend, Professor Fadl Kaboub, to talk cryptocurrency with us sometime. That would be really interesting. This FBI sting operation, creating an app, marketing an app. This is the long game, like this is really clever, because it's not entrapment, because they're not enticing them to commit a crime. They're not suggesting they commit a crime. They're just creating the mechanism on which everything is going to be planned so that they can listen in. It's like if the FBI was, the AT&T, phone guy who's installing the landlines in the mobster's house. It's they created
even
a
worse
phone
on an app. You have to fill out, you have to sign an agreement. You have to click that little thing that's you don't even get the protection of a phone line. It's just like, nope. Hey, I'm sure that thing says somewhere in there, we may, like, these calls are being recorded. We're paying attention.
It could say we are the FBI, because no one reads the terms and conditions before.
That's right. The FBI will be following this communication. Hey, that's another thing that came out about all these the cyber war stuff is one of the big groups that did the one with the oil company. The FBI was deep inside of that criminal syndicate's actions. And they had hacked into this is not what they did to track the Bitcoin. They're not saying how they track the Bitcoin wallet, just we can do it. So if you're running your little criminal enterprise, or you think it's real secret, it's not. But they were also separately inside the computers of the people running those companies, or running those little syndicates. They knew when they logged on. They know their keystrokes. They knew that they were hacking these companies. So there's this, the NSA and FBI and all, they have all these different groups. And sometimes they just watch the criminal actions go on because they're building cases over time. And I'm sure on this app, it was the same way. There was probably some big argument about like, today's the day we're going to, go arrest these 800 people around the globe. I'm sure there were people saying like, no, give us another week, give us another 3 days. We just know we're going to get more and more, because whether you think the government's doing good work or not, and or you think they're trustworthy or not, they're paying attention to a whole lot of things that make something like the insurrection happen without them knowing about it seems a little impossible, right? That with all the assets that are available, that these kinds of failures can be happening. So I'm not trying to stir up any conspiracy theories, but
it's clear that these government agencies like the FBI, the NSA, the CIA, while they often operate in a independent and somewhat objective way, they can be swayed by political pressure, and there can be political pressure that is brought to bear on these agencies that will, shape priorities, at times cause them to turn a blind eye to something. I think that there was probably, in the lead up to the insurrection, the time between election day and insurrection day, those 2 months, there probably was political pressure on those agencies to not spend a lot of resources.
Don't treat the Trump supporters. You're saying don't treat the Trump supporters like they're a bunch of criminals. Give them a pass. Yep. Don't worry about it. These guys are safe. I know who you are. I'm sure. Look, that's absolutely.
And I also think, especially when
that's going to come out.
Yeah, and when you contrast that with how Black Lives Matter was treated, like there is a not so subtle racism that's a part of this as well. That like, oh well, like the white people, they're not going to like damage anything.
That's right. Well, one of the storylines that's starting to emerge is that the National Guard felt very much back on their heels because just months earlier, Trump had used them at the direction of the head of the Pentagon to go and clear Lafayette Square so he could hold up that Bible. So that action that was so wrong, was so bad, lingered in the mindset of how are we going to interact with people who are coming here to have a rally or to have an event. And now all of a sudden because of the pressures you're talking about, which was clearly like, Trump has called them here. It's his rally. Literally, he's the one addressing these people. That created a context. There was a sympathies among many of the people who were making the decisions about this, that these are the kinds of good patriots and so many of the people that were arrested on that day have their own military background. So the interconnection between those communities, what happened with the clearing of Lafayette Square, because it was Trump, all of that stuff together is what should have been corrected by the sentence above the United States Supreme Court, carved into the marble over at the Department of Justice, which is equal justice under the law, that everyone is treated fairly and treated in the same way. Someone doesn't get treated worse and someone doesn't get a pass. That Trump supporters or the president, they're not political diplomats that can just park wherever they want and you can't give them a ticket. But that's how they treated these people. They treated them as if these are the good guys. Ron Johnson, to this day, and a number of other Republicans are still talking about these folks as if that's exactly who they are. That that's where they find themselves. I'm back on this thing again. I just can't seem to shake it. I found that an insurrection, it lingers more than 6 months in my mind, in my heart. I just can't.
Absolutely. We cannot get over this until justice has been served. It is too important.
And what's the justice? What justice can ever be served for this? Like what?
Yeah.
I literally don't know. Like, okay, you're going
Yeah.
to put all these people in jail for 3 months or 6 months. Donald Trump's going to be
Well,
convicted of inciting
there's
a
got to be,
riot. I don't even know. Like, I just think
yeah,
we,
there's got to be some kind of accounting for
it's got to
what
be a
took place.
generation that never forgets this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is why it's so frustrating that the bipartisan January 6th commission, uh, was squelched by the filibuster last week, because that would have given us the opportunity to have some kind of sense of, okay, what took place in a way that was similar to the September 11th commission. Over a period of time, let's have some reckoning. Let's take an account of what took place. Let's figure out what went wrong, and we'll figure out what we need to do to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
And none of that is going to happen. None of that is, unless it comes out of these committees. But there isn't going to be the independent, relatively objective, bipartisan commission that would have taken place, that had bipartisan support.
At least not yet.
Yeah.
And I was surprised. Nancy Pelosi keeps saying to people, it took like 18 months to get the 9/11 commission active. I had forgotten that. She said people didn't want the commission. And then I was remembering, oh yeah, the Bush administration pushed against it. They didn't want people snooping around. Finally people came around to it. So it's possible that at some point sentiment or control of the Senate changes enough where it's like, oh no, we're not done looking at that thing yet. There's going to be a full on. I mean, the fact they were going to try to get a commission together and be completed within a year of the insurrection was impressive, right? That was the negotiated piece of it. So it really could be that this thing, keeps moving.
Yeah. And I want to point out again, and I think it's just important to emphasize that this commission has bipartisan support.
Right.
More than 30 Republican House members voted in favor of forming the commission, including, my congressman. 7 Republican senators voted in favor of forming this commission. It has bipartisan support. It was stopped because of the filibuster in the Senate.
Yeah, because they couldn't get 10. Because they couldn't get 10 senators from the Republican Party to go along with it.
So
unbelievable.
I think it's just real. I think it's just, in terms of the way political, landscape gets shaped by language, and there are Republicans who want to characterize all of this as, well, a Democratic partisan witch hunt. No, this has bipartisan support, and not just like the lone Mitt Romney, no, actually there's a sizable number of Republicans on board with this. And I think it's important for Democrats to continue to talk about this being a bipartisan effort.
Yeah. And the problem is, right, that in the Senate, it's controlled by the leadership. The Senate is on both sides, both political parties, controlled by the leadership. So it kind of doesn't matter what other.
I thought it was controlled by Joe Manchin.
What other people what other people say and what other people think, right? It's where the leadership finds itself. And when Mitch McConnell came out and said to the members of his party in the Senate, it would be a personal favor to me if you voted against this. That's putting your foot on the brake, right? And he was saying, we're not doing, so it wasn't just a conscience vote and let's let every Republicans were having to decide a whole lot of things. And when an insurrection is the thing you're using to have to determine your loyalty to following the Senate leader, that's something's not square here. There's still something that we're going to know about this. It's not quite sitting right. Hey, speaking of something not feeling right, Rob, I'm a big Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States of America fan, big fan of hers. I have shirts with her name on it that I wear out in public. I mean, I'm literally wear the shirt. Yesterday, when she stood in Guatemala, a country I've spent a lot of time in, have a very warm spot in my heart for the land of eternal spring. and said, I want to say to people in this country and around, and the triangle countries and the other countries who are thinking about coming to the United States, do not come. We will not let you in. It was not a good day for me in my deep support and affection for the Vice President of the United States. I just think the Biden administration is wrong on this. I think they're messaging it in a wrong way, and I think they're thinking wrong about it. And I'd love to help them. I'd love to help them think right about it. Love to push them down a common good path. And if they need to come on a bike ride for 65 days to get their thinking clear on this, I'd like to invite them to come along and do that too. I saw Joe out for a ride the other day, the president. It looked great. Why don't you bring that bike down there to El Paso and shoot with us, down to Brownsville for a couple of weeks. The answer should not be, we have laws, we will enforce our laws, which is what the vice president said. The statement needs to be, our laws are insufficient to the situation. Our laws need to change. Our laws are not serving the common good. They're not protecting our country. They're not protecting you as people that are seeking asylum or refugee status. They're not even serving immigrants or other citizens. Our laws are not suited for this situation. Until we get those figured out, we need you to wait to come to the United States. If that's where they are. Now, I think they should get this stuff figured out even sooner. But this idea of, we have laws, we read the laws, we're going to enforce the laws. These are bad laws. Our immigration and border practices laws are not serving this country or anyone, and they need to be changed. And I sure hope that the work that Vice President Harris is going to do, with being someone who's been tapped for this work, is going to do something more than simply say, these are the laws we've got. Now, I'm not saying that she should say to people, break the law. They're not breaking the law by coming to a port of entry and seeking asylum. Right. And this messaging that's coming out, that somehow you're violating the law by seeking asylum, by properly crossing into the country to seek asylum. Back in the 80s, this is what chess champions were doing out of the Soviet Union all the time. That was somehow really great, right? You sneak out of your hotel and go run up to some government official and say, I'm from Soviet Union. I want to seek asylum. The only way you can seek asylum is to get on U.S. soil. You can't do it from Mexico. You can't do it from Guatemala. You can't do it from Haiti. You can't do it from the Dominican Republic. You have to do it on U.S. soil. So the reason people cross the border in front of Border Patrol agents, because they want them to see them so they can say, I'm seeking asylum. If that's not working, let's make a process that works. Yeah. We make these laws and they're not working. So someone crossing into this country and seeking asylum is not something you should be dissuading people from doing. So I'm not on a commission to help them think this through. I'm just a guy in my basement. And then I'm going to be a guy on a bicycle riding from San Diego to Florida to try to raise awareness around what's actually happening at the border, what needs to happen at the border, and who the people are that know the answers to what's happening and what needs to happen at the border. And that's called WeThePeopleRide.org. And if you're thinking about any of this, you should come along with us. But it was a hard day yesterday to hear the vice president take that tack. I know the Biden administration sees this differently than I do. I'm glad to disagree with them on it, but this is pretty serious. This is not like I'm not trying to slide in here as old Mike Pence, like, the president and I won't see eye to eye on the insurrection. This is also a big deal. Like, they need to get this one right. Immigration has been the backbone of this country from its founding, and it has been the lifeblood, and it's been screwed up that whole time. So it's important, and we have to get it right.
Yep. And from this is the politics podcast, and from a political perspective, there's got to be the recognition that kids in cages, asylum seekers, refugees coming to the United States, and how they were treated at the border was a significant political liability to Donald Trump, particularly with movable evangelical voters. Now, Donald Trump won the vast majority, won 75% of white evangelicals in 2020, which is a huge number, but it was down 6% from 2016. And that was part of Joe Biden's margin of victory in this, the key states that he won. He won those key states because there were evangelicals who did not vote for Donald Trump again, as they had in 2016. And, we know from our work with Vote Common Good, talking with so many of these folks, surveys that we've done, polling that we've done, the biggest issue to movable evangelical voters was kids in cages and immigration. And the Biden administration has an opportunity here from a political perspective to solidify the support of white evangelicals and to grow the support of white evangelicals for whom this is a huge issue for a number of reasons. When they simply, in a much nicer tone, in a kinder, gentler way, reiterate the exact same policy that Donald Trump had, again, doing it in a kinder, gentler way. I'd rather hear Kamala Harris say it than Donald Trump say it, because she's more pleasant to listen to. But when it's the same policy, this has a potential to really backfire on the Biden administration. If they don't recognize that kids in cages was a major thing that moved the American electorate, like if they just think, well, it's no big deal, business as usual, it could backfire on them as well.
I think you're right. And look, they will say and have said our policies are not the same. We've changed the punitive policies. And you're right, that the tone has to be different. And it is. And the policies actually are different, but the messaging is staying the same. Yeah. This is the key. And if you think that people only listen to policy, they don't. People don't know the policies. They know the messaging and they know the tone. So yeah, you do want to be more empathic. You do want to be more understanding. You want to deal with the issues that are happening in Guatemala and all this. It's great that Vice President Harris is there and that she's doing that work and that she's negotiating that and she's working with companies to build out a different economic situation. But when the messaging is, don't come, we don't want you, we can't help you, we can't figure our own stuff out, we've still got the border closed because of COVID precautions, and we just can't deal with you. Sorry, we're just the United States of America. And I was told by this president, there's nothing America can't do if we do it together. There's nothing America can't do if we put our heart into it. And then she stands there and says, don't come, we can't handle you. That messaging, and I know they're bouncing around on this, but this is not the time to play to the lock up the borders Republicans. This is a time to knock that stool out from under those people and make this thing right and make this thing work. And it just I'm so glad we're going to spend some time this year trying to turn people's voters and citizens' minds around on this stuff, because this is not the way that and I know that the Biden administration keeps saying, I heard Jen Psaki say it on a podcast the other day. She said, like, look, immigration really is important, but it's just not a movable issue right now. And it's not where we're going to spend our time and our energies on solving this. We're going to work on COVID. We're going to work on the economy. We're going to work on infrastructure. That's what we're going to do. Great. Add something else to your list and get on to immigration. Like, make it a number one thing. So I'm going to go to Washington, D.C. tomorrow. We're going to participate with a group called Faith in Action, a number of other groups, and calling people to fast for freedom for current immigrants in the United States. There's a policy bill that we want to see be moved. We're going to be messaging about this, and we're going to ask people, Rob, I don't know if you know about this. They're asking people to fast for a month. Now, not a single person for a month, but to pick up a week or to fast for a day during that week. So to join this month-long effort of religious people fasting, it's something that many religious traditions do when someone's sharpening their spiritual focus. And so they're going to ask people to fast for this, to raise awareness around these policy issues. And I'm all for that. We do need different policy. The best way to get different policies is to get different policymakers. We now got different policymakers in the administration. We need them now to act on this thing. This is now the time that they have to move and that they have to act. So it was not a great day. It was not the but
yep, you're gonna have those in the ebb and flow of a 4-year administration, 8-year administration. You're gonna have those.
If they put
and hopefully it'll be it's going to be hopefully this will be a learning experience for for the Biden administration.
I hope so. Well, hey, thanks for being with us today, friends. Tomorrow's our Faith Day. We're joined by 3 faith voices: the incomparable Stephanie Rose Spalding, Dominique Gilliard, Laura Truax, and myself. And then I think we're going to have a little piece from the bishop of the Washington, D.C. Episcopal Church and the National Cathedral on Thursday. Mary Ann Buddy. I always like talking to a bishop. Feels very authoritative and somehow ancient. Bishops. It's like when chess was created. So I think it's awesome. So happy Common Day, Common Good Tuesday to you all, and we will see you tomorrow. See you, Rob. Bye, Dan.